Question number 43. For a complex number z, let 1 plus z to the power 15 be equal to a0 plus a1z plus a2z squared so on till a15z to the power 15. The value of a0 minus 4a2 plus 16a4 so on till minus 2 to the power 14 a subscript 14 squared plus 2a1 minus 8a3 plus 32a5 so on till minus 2 to the power 15 a15 squared is equal to 2 to the power 30, 2 to the power 15, 1 or 5 to the power 15. Okay, so if you analyze this particular sum, then you will find that everywhere you have powers of 2. In the first sum, you have all even powers of 2. Okay, now what do I mean by even powers? By even powers I mean 2 raised to 0, 2 raised to 2, 2 raised to 4 and so on. And if you look at the second bracket or the second sum, it has all odd powers. That is 2 raised to 1, 2 raised to 3, 2 raised to 5 and so on. Okay. Now to solve this sum, what I have done is I have considered two simpler cases. Alright. In this sum we have 1 plus z raised to 15. So I have started with 1 plus z raised to 2. Okay, so what I have done is I have expanded 1 plus z raised to 2 by using a plus b bracket squared. So it is 1 plus 2z plus z squared, and from this expansion I have identified a0 to be the constant term, a1 to be the coefficient of z, that is 2, and a2 which is the coefficient of z squared, so that is again 1. Okay, and then I have tried to find out the value of an expression similar to this but for 1 plus z bracket squared. Okay, so as we pointed out earlier, in the first sum or the first bracket we have all even powers of 2 and also even coefficients a0, a2 and so on. So there will be two such coefficients for 1 plus z raised to 2. Those coefficients are a0 and a2 accompanied by respective powers of 2. And the other thing about these sums is that the signs of the terms keep on changing, plus minus plus minus plus minus, and same thing here, plus minus plus minus. So because a0 is positive, or the sign of a0 in the original expression is positive, 4a2 will be negative. Okay, now this particular sum or series ends at a15. Okay, so a15 is the largest possible, well, I would say a15 is the last coefficient, and that is because we are expanding 1 plus z raised to 15. Alright, so for this we will stop at a2, and then in the next bracket we should consider all those coefficients in the expansion which have odd subscript, and we should multiply them by the corresponding power of 2. So in this case it is 2 to the power 1. Yes, and there is no other odd coefficient now. Okay, after a1 it is a3, but for 1 plus z squared there is no a3. Okay, and then we have to substitute these values here. a0 is 1, put it there. a1 is 2, put it there. Oh, oops, sorry, not there. a1 is 2, put it there, and a2 is 1, you have to put it here. And if you do that, then you will get 1 minus 4 bracket squared for a0 minus 4a2, and then plus 2 into 2 squared because a1 is 2, and that is 3 squared or minus 3 squared plus 4 squared, and that is 5 squared. Okay, so as far as 1 plus z bracket squared is concerned, we have got the second power of 5. Now we need to see whether this pattern repeats itself. Okay, because the option D here indeed has the power or the number 5. Okay, so then I did the same process for 1 plus z raised to 3. Okay, again I used a plus b bracket cube formula. So it is 1 plus 3z squared plus z cube, as you already know. And then you have to identify a0, a1, a2, and this time we will have a3 as well. a0 is 1, a1 is 3, so is a2, and again a3 is 1. And then evaluate a similar expression for 1 plus z bracket cube. So all even subscripts should be in the first bracket. Yes. So a0 minus 4a2, there is no a4. Then here we will have 2 times a1, which is 2 into 3, minus 8 a3. Okay, so we have followed this pattern given in the sum. Okay, so we have multiplied the coefficients by the appropriate powers of 2, and we have also taken care of the fact that the terms are alternately positive and negative. Okay, so then having written down this expression, we have to now substitute the values. a0 is 1, put it there. a2 is 3, put it there. a1 is also 3, so this will go here, and a3 is 1. Okay, so it is 1 minus 12 bracket squared or minus 11 squared, and this is 6 minus 8, so minus 2 squared. And if you do this, then it will be 5 cube. 121, the square of negative 11, 4, the square of negative 2, and that is 125. Okay, so what is it? It is 5 cube. Alright, so for 1 plus z squared it is 2 or 5 squared, and for 1 plus z raised to 3 or cubed it is 5 cube. Okay, so from this I concluded that if 1 plus z raised to 15 or the corresponding sum is evaluated, we must have 5 to the power 15. Okay, I guess you can prove this result with the help of mathematical induction, but as far as multiple choice questions are concerned, this much is enough. Okay, so we successfully got option D. Yes, so the main thing in this sum is to identify the pattern. 1 plus z raised to 2, 5 squared. 1 plus z raised to 3, 5 cube. So 1 plus z raised to 15 must be 5 to the power 15. Okay, hence the correct option is D. See, that means if in a multiple choice question you are stuck somewhere and you don't know how to proceed, then you can always start with simpler cases like we have done here. Okay, and then you can actually generalize the result to pick the correct option. Okay, question number 44 based on determinants and matrices. Let A be a 3 by 3 matrix which has determinant 3. See, now determinant is non-zero, so it is invertible, may be useful, and satisfies the equation a squared minus 7a plus 4i is a null matrix. Now some people read this as 0, but we know that adding two matrices we are never going to get 0, we are going to get null matrix. Okay, so a squared minus 7a plus 4i is a null matrix of order 3. Then the value of the determinant of a minus 2i is mod is, and as you can see everywhere you have positive values 1, 9, 5 and 3. Okay, we first start with the determinant. Determinant of a is already given, that is 3, and it has been asked to find mod of determinant of a minus 2i. So we proceed towards squaring of a minus 2i. That is going to be our first step. What happens if you square a minus 2i? Although matrix multiplication is usually not commutative, a into identity matrix is identity matrix into a, and both of them are equal to a itself. So if you expand this, you can apply a minus b bracket squared formula, which will give you a squared minus 4a, that is 2ab, plus b squared. Okay, so now b squared is the square of minus 2i. Square of minus 2 is 4, and identity matrix raised to any natural number is the identity matrix itself. So once you know this and expand the a minus 2i squared, then you'll get a squared minus 4i, well sorry, a squared minus 4a into I, but that is again a plus 4i. Okay, and now this equation should be brought into play. Okay, now we already have a squared and 4i. The only thing that is lacking is now minus 7a. Okay, so I have brought in minus 7a, but our original expression was minus 4a. Okay, so I have added plus 3a to this. Okay, so a minus 2i the whole squared is now a squared minus 7a plus 4i plus 3a. But what is this particular expression equal to? Is it not equal to null matrix? Yes, that is given in the problem, which means a minus 2i squared has got simplified to 3a. Or we can say that a minus 2i into a minus 2i is 3a. And now we can use the property of the determinants, that determinant of product of two matrices is equal to determinant of the first matrix into determinant of the second matrix. Okay, this is the property. You can prove it, but let's accept it as a ready-made result. So I can now say that determinant of a minus 2i squared, because we have the same determinant here, should be equal to determinant of 3a. Yes. Now if you multiply any matrix by a scalar, then each and every entry of that matrix gets multiplied by that number. Okay, so determinant of 3a is actually not 3 times determinant of a, but is 3 cubed into determinant of a. Correct? I hope you got this point. This is important. Okay, in general, if A is a square matrix of order n, and if k is any non-zero scalar, then determinant of ka is actually k raised to n into determinant of a. Okay, remember this property. So I have used that here. We know that A is a 3 by 3 matrix, and that's why I have taken the third power of 3. Okay, now what is determinant of A? Determinant of A is also 3. So determinant of A minus 2i squared is now 81, isn't it? So determinant of A minus 2i must be plus or minus 9, but because they have asked the modulus, it must be 9, and hence the correct option is B. Okay, and not D as this particular person has marked. Okay, now students often get confused between these two. They think that determinants behave like numbers. So determinant of A plus B is always determinant of A plus determinant of B. No, that is wrong. Okay, that is not always right. Just like matrix multiplication is not always commutative, determinant of A plus B is not always equal to determinant of A plus determinant of B, but determinant of the product is equal to product of the individual determinants. Okay, and it is the second property that we have used here in this particular sum. And if you go to option A, it appears that the student actually decided to mark A, and then he or she changed his mind and went for option D. Okay, so what was the thought process behind obtaining 1? All he did was take the determinant of A, take the determinant of identity matrix, multiplied by 2, 1. But is that right? No, that is not right, because we have now seen that only the second property is true. First property is not always true, may be possessed by some special matrices, but in general, no. Okay, So this is the only sum based on matrices and determinants, unlike JE, where you also have a sum on system of linear equations, including in addition to matrices and determinants, and sometimes you also have a separate sum on determinants in JE. Okay, so that was the 44th sum based on combined properties of determinants and matrices. Let's now go to the last one. That is question number 45. In question 45, we are given two functions, g of x and f of x. Okay, again g of x is a piecewise defined function. G of x is equal to 1 if x belongs to the closed interval -1 to 1 and it's 0 otherwise. And f of x is now being defined as a limit. So limit as h tends to 0 of 1 upon 2h into the integral of g of y with respect to y as y runs from x minus h to x plus h. And they're asking us to find the value of f of 1. Now the board students who do not prepare for JE, they are not familiar with such expressions. Okay, because for them limits are something different and definite integrals are something different, derivatives are something different. Okay, so when you see such a thing where you not only have integrals but also limits, students or you may get confused. Okay, but if you have your basics right, if you know what limits are and what a definite integral is, then there is no reason to worry. Okay, f of 1 has been asked. Okay, and because all options are numbers, we can say with 100% certainty that f of 1 exists, which means this limit exists. Okay, and if this limit exists, it means it is enough to consider either the LHL or RHL to evaluate f of 1. Okay, now I am considering right hand limit. You can also solve the sum by considering the left hand limit, but I'll do it with the right hand limit. Okay, now what do I mean by right hand limit? I'm going to take h positive. So I first replaced x by 1 in the definite integral. So what I got is this, f of 1 equal to limit as h tends to 0, 1 upon 2h will be there as it is, g of y dy will also be there as it is, but instead of x, now I should write, or I have written 1. Okay, now let's consider this graph. Okay, this graph is that of the function g of x. Okay, and in between -1 and 1 it is equal to 1, so this is now part of the horizontal line y equal to 1. And then the moment you come outside the interval -1 to 1, the graph coincides with x-axis. Correct? Yes, because there the function is 0. And if you now use the property of definite integrals, that integral a to b f of x dx is integral a to c f of x dx plus integral c to b f of x dx, then it allows you to split our interval of integration at 1. Oh, sorry, not at 1. Yeah, at 1. Okay, it allows us to split the interval of integration at 1. Okay, now because we have already said that right hand limit is being taken, we can be 100% sure that 1 will be between 1 plus h and 1 minus h. Correct? So these values are now like a, b and c. We are splitting our interval of integration at c. Okay, so the second step is limit as h tends to 0, 1 upon 2h, splitting the definite integrals interval of integration. So 1 minus h to 1, that is from a to c, g of y dy, plus second integral will be 1 to 1 plus h, g of y dy, that is c to b. Okay, Now because h is positive, for all values of x from 1 to 1 plus h, g of x is going to be 0. Yes, because it is 0 otherwise. So whenever x is greater than 1 or x is less than 1, g of x immediately becomes or goes to 0. So that allows us to write g of y to be 0 and g of y here to be 1, because now we are in the interval -1 to 1. Okay, so there is no need to worry about the second integral now, because the function itself is 0. Then let's go to the first integral. How can we simplify this? One's integral with respect to y will be y. So here y is the variable of integration, which is a dummy variable, as you might know in the definite integral. So one's integral y, put the limits 1 and 1 minus h. So that will give you 1 minus bracket 1 minus h, or essentially h. h will get cancelled now. So you will be left with limit as h tends to 0 of 1 upon 2, which is 1 upon 2. Okay. So did we get f of 1? Yes, we had started with f of 1. We carefully looked at the definition of g. Accordingly, we selected right hand limit. Okay. And then we split the interval of integration at the appropriate location, so that one of the definite integrals became 0, and then the rest is simple integration and substituting the limits. So this last MCQ from the aptitude test was based on definite integrals, limits, and piecewise defined functions. So I would say this sum requires you to know what definite integrals are, how to find them, and more importantly, how to use their properties. Okay, so that we could solve or find the value of the function at any given point. And it also requires you to know how to evaluate limits. Okay, so coming back to our discussion on questions, we have solved all 15 MCQs. Okay, and now this is my personal opinion. The level of IISER aptitude test as far as this particular paper is concerned is slightly less difficult than JEE Main. Okay, so if you were to write or compare the difficulty levels, then I would say MHT-CET, then the IISER aptitude test, and then the JEE Main, and the advanced and the KVPY. Okay, so there is a good chance that you can get very good score in IISER aptitude test. And again, this discussion is only confined to mathematics section. Okay, so you can get all 15 sums right if they don't change the pattern of number of questions. Okay, so you can score as many marks as you can, you should, but according to me, the mathematics section of the IISER aptitude test is not very difficult. So this is about 2017. In the next session, we will cover 2018.